call to order the meeting of the Ames Zoning Board of Adjustment for March 26, 2025. We have a member who is not able to attend in person, so he is actually on the phone. Mr. McDaniel's right there on the phone, just so you all know. So there are four of us, and we're expecting Ms. Cruz to be here also. But we'll go ahead and start. Our first item on the, let me read the intro first. The Zoning Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial board created by the City of Ames. The board's purpose is to decide on applications for special use permits, exceptions, and variances to the zoning ordinance, applications for conditional use permits in the floodplain, requests for reasonable accommodation because of a disability, and appeals of decision of the zoning enforcement officer. As a board of the city, we welcome all testimony. We make our decisions based on the facts and evidence as allowed under city code and presented in open meeting. Testimony before the board must be given under oath or affirmation. If the proceedings become lengthy, we may ask the testimony be focused on new facts or evidence not already presented. We ask that you come to the microphone if you wish to speak so that your testimony will be audible and may be recorded. Before speaking, please complete an orange information card and hand it to the recording secretary, Mr. Rickmeyer, right up here. When you are testifying, please address your remarks to the board. We also ask that the proceedings be orderly. The Zoning Board of Adjustment is an independent board of volunteer citizens. We are not part of the city administration. We are served in our efforts this evening, though, by Jane Chang, Assistant City Attorney, Kelly Diekman, Planning and Housing Director, Justin Moore and Benjamin Campbell as city planners, and Natalie Rickmeyer as the recording secretary. The order of proceedings for all applications will be as follows. First, an oral statement will be summarizing the issues and procedural steps will be presented by the staff. Second, testimony and evidence will be presented by the applicant. Third, testimony may be heard from any members of the audience who wish to speak in support or in opposition to the appeal. Next, the board will give the applicant and the city staff an opportunity to present concluding summaries and arguments. And finally, the board will discuss the issues and evidence and come to a decision. Our first item on the agenda tonight is the approval of the minutes of the meeting from January 8th, 2025. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from January 8th, 2025?
I'll make a motion.
Moved by Whitehouse.
I'll second.
All right, second by Patton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Oh, thank you. Forgot to wait for him. For those opposed, same sign. Okay, the minutes of the meeting from January 8th, 2025 are approved. The approval of the minutes for the meeting from March 12th, 2025 is the second item on the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting for the minutes from March 12th, 2025? They are short.
I'll make the motion.
All right, motion by Whitehouse,
I'll second.
second by Patton. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, I was not here, so I will not vote. It was my fault that we didn't have the meeting. All right,
He has a good excuse.
the motion's passed. The meeting from the minutes from March 12th, 2025 meeting are approved. Our third item on the agenda is a public hearing on a request for a one-year extension of the special use permit for a temporary yard waste collection and transfer site at 220 and 400 Friel Drive in the general industrial zone. Benjamin?
Good evening. Green RU has applied for a special use permit, temporary yard waste to operate a temporary yard waste collection and transfer site at 220 and 400 Friel Drive. Those are the properties that are hatched there. The yard waste collection has operated at this site since 2017 with repeated temporary special use permits. Green RU does have a contract with the City of Ames Resource Recovery Division for yard waste, and the current special use permit expires at the beginning of May this year. The Public Works Division has indicated, or department has indicated that this will be the final year for yard waste at this site and that they are investigating other alternatives in the future. The applicant is proposing no permanent improvements to the site in keeping with how the property has operated in the past. The site will be used for yard waste collection for trees and shrubs and so forth. People will come in off of Friel Drive, will drop them off. I've got a site plan here. Drop them off in the center there and then pull out on Friel. In the past, the applicant has also used an exit off of 220 when the traffic volumes are increased, but it's not anticipated that will need to happen very often, if at all. The yard waste facility operates Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and Saturdays, and then with increasing hours in the fall when demand for the site increases. There are several free yard waste days that do happen, most of those in the fall, and there are extended hours for that. And when that does happen, the applicant works with the Public Works Department to put up signs on Lincoln Way and South Dayton to direct traffic so that people come down Dayton, over on Southeast 5th, and then up Friel for traffic management flow. Staff does recommend alternative one, approval of the proposed special use permit with the conditions that the operating hours are in line with what was on the application, that the site plan should be consistent with the plan that was submitted, and that the term of use shall expire within 1 year, and that within 60 days, the site will be restored to its original condition, which I believe is also in keeping with what's in the contract the applicant has with the city.
Benjamin, did you get any feedback from any neighbors? We had some feedback in the past.
I have not heard from anyone.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Some of us are very familiar with this. All right. Is the applicant here and do they wish to address the board?
Yes, the applicant is here.
Okay. Go ahead and,
Unless you have questions, I don't need to.
all right, go ahead and we'll bring you up and swear you in. If you'd raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I swear to tell the truth.
All right, thank you. You may go ahead.
I don't really have any comments, but if you guys have questions, I can help answer them.
Okay. Any questions from the board for the applicant? I guess the one concern that had been brought up in the past, I think, is worth addressing. Has there been any issue with rodent infestation again? I think that's the only comment we had in the past.
I guess I'm not aware of rodent problems in the past, or if we have an issue, I guess that's not been brought to my attention.
Okay.
So it's not something that we're concerned about.
All right. I think it's part and parcel with what the use is. So if there's not an issue, then I just know that's been the issue in the past. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. All right, any follow-up with staff?
Natalie, do you need this?
All right. Any members of the audience who wish to speak in support or in opposition to this item? Okay. All right. Any follow-up? Benjamin, I don't think there's any follow-up. All right. Do I have a motion from the board?
I'll make a motion to accept alternative one.
Motion from White House, alternative one. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Patent. Any discussion regarding this item? Okay, let's do roll call vote.
Schneider,
Aye.
Patton,
Aye.
White House,
Aye.
Marshall,
Aye.
All right, the motion has passed. It has been approved. Any person desiring to appeal this decision to a court may do so to a court of record within 30 days after the filing of this decision. All right, moving along to item number 4. Item number 4 is a public hearing on a request for a special use permit to construct a new building for an existing salvage yard business at 501 Friel Drive. And we have Justin, Mr. Moore.
All right.
Thank you very much. So Bell Salvage is requesting a special use permit to construct a new building and truck scale on their site that you can see there on the aerial 501 Friel Drive. It's located there just to the west of the Southeast 5th intersection with Friel Drive. So in general industrial zones, which this is zoned as, salvage yards are required to have a special use permit as a use, and therefore that includes any new development on the salvage yard site related to it. So in this particular case, the owner is proposing to construct a 4,200 square foot building that you see there with some paved access, and then also a truck scale there just to the south of the new building for weighing materials that are brought in on trucks. According to the description from the owner, the new building will be used to sort materials. There'll also be some shop area in there as well, some workshop space, and that sort of related activity. So the proposal that you see there is only for that affected part of the site. The rest of the site will still function as it has for the last few decades. There will be no addition or expansion of any piles, according to the owner, any of the salvage piles. Additionally, the owner will be adding in the front yard here landscaping, so trees and shrubs, and also required parking here to the north of the building, paved parking, along with the ADA access there as well. We do have in our recommendation there a few of those conditions. We are allowing between these two new driveways for the high screen wall that currently exists along the street to be removed due to the addition of landscaping and also the building. So that will help the green space area in the front yard. And so in that area where there's previously been required to be a high screen wall, we're allowing that in that particular portion of the property to be removed. The rest of the screen wall around the site will be required to be repaired if it's in disrepair and maintained as it has been. So we pointed that out in there as well. Looking through the standards, so there are kind of two components to the review in the finding of facts and conclusions. We have the general standards, which look at its compatibility, obviously in the zone, and then also its relationship to, the neighborhood being harmonious with its surroundings. Then we have salvage yard criteria as well. There's three of those. I won't read through all of those, but you've got those there in your report. We did find that each of those criteria were met in this particular case. And so if you have any questions, I can certainly answer those and we can talk through them at this point in time. So I think that summarizes the proposal and the plan, and I can answer any questions from the staff side.
Any questions from the board to the staff right at this point? Okay, if the applicant's here and would like to address the board, they may do so. Go ahead and approach, sir. You raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So my name's Sean Peters. I'm with CGA, the company that did the site plan for this. So kind of like the last one, I don't really have any comments. I could just answer any questions you guys have about the site plan at all.
Any questions for applicant? Okay, I don't think there's any questions. All right, thank you. All right. Are there any members of the audience who like to speak in favor or in opposition to this item? Okay, being none, any questions back for staff just to close the loop?
There wasn't any email or letters sent about this, was there?
No, we didn't receive any comment or question.
Okay. Okay. Do I have a motion from the board regarding this item?
I move to approve alternative one.
Okay, motion by Patton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Whitehouse. Any discussion? I think that's already pretty much similar use to that area, so
Yep.
I don't think this is actually a pretty good upgrade. All right, roll call vote, please.
Schneider,
Aye.
Patton,
Aye.
Whitehouse,
Aye.
Marshall,
Aye.
Okay, the motion is declared approved. Any person wishing to appeal this decision may do so to a court of record within 30 days after the filing of this decision. Fifth item on the agenda is a public hearing on a request for a special use permit to allow use of the property at 702 Clark Avenue as a social service provider use. Mr. Deacon.
Yeah, Ray Anderson's also going to be up here as the planner that's worked on this.
Okay.
So with this item, so we're here for a special use permit, just like the last two items that you just had. You did get some communications today, so I do want to point out that we've printed out all of the emails that we have received since Friday related to this matter. I also, very late today, sent you what I called refined conditions. So that should be on the top of your packet. And I'll talk to those in a moment. They're intended to clarify some of the elements of the description of the use and the intensity of use. They did not fundamentally alter the allowances of the site, but I'll go through those in a little bit more detail. So tonight you're asked to look at a proposal for 702 Clark Avenue for a social service provider use. The background is that this use was recently allowed to be, City Council recently amended the Single Family Conservation Overlay District to allow for consideration by special use permit of a social service provider for one additional property as defined in the ordinance, which is on those properties that abut a commercial zone, which is effectively 7th Street and Clark. So if this project is approved tonight, then there would be no additional social service providers that could be added to the district. There are some that are already present within the neighborhood, but this would be the first and the last additional one to be able to be approved under that ordinance that City Council adopted. Just want to make that clear because this is a really new allowance for this area from the last couple months. So overall, the site is proposed primarily to house two functions. One is the office or the administrative functions of the social service provider. And then the main activity and service of the group is to provide what's described as hospitality services 6 days a week. And there's some hours that we'll talk about that are related to that. And then the targeted service population that it reaches. And so I'm going to have Ray walk through the site plan and the layout of the house, and then we'll come back to the discussion of the staff recommendation.
Good evening.
Mr. Anderson.
I'll start with it's called the Simplified Site Plan. It's not a full site plan, but it portrays the main features of the property that apply to this case. It's a lot on the corner of Clark Avenue and 7th Street, the northeast corner of that intersection. The lot itself is 60 foot wide and 160 feet deep. So it has 9,600 square feet of lot area. On that lot is a 2-story house, single family home. Originally built that way in 1900. It has a garage / carriage house in this location. At the east property line, there's an alley that runs along the east property line. And this was originally built as a carriage house. There are 2 parking spaces inside there, and there's a space above that's not used as living space, but may have been when it was first built. There's an existing driveway off of Clark Avenue at this location. And you can park 2 tandem spaces there, one car in front of the other. There is a gravel area that's been used for parking for quite some time off the alley that they are proposing to pave. There is a sidewalk that runs from the alley to the back door that's proposed. It's not there today. Concrete sidewalk 5 feet wide as access to the rear door. And then they are proposing a deck that's approximately 7.5 feet square at the rear entry to the dwelling. And they're proposing to put in a door that's 36 inches, has a 36-inch wide opening instead of a 32-inch wide opening, so increasing that by 4 inches. There is a fence that was constructed on the property last summer. It runs along the south property line. In this area, it comes back up to the street, goes along the south property line, and then back up to the north to about the south side of the garage/carriage house. And then there'll be a section of fence on the north side of that garage to the north property line, and then extending west back to not quite halfway toward the front of the house. So it encloses the rear yard and a portion of the side yards. There is no fence in the front yard. There would be a gate across the proposed sidewalk. And the rear entry is where the guests would be entering the house, and then staff would enter through the front door with access off of Clark Avenue. There's landscaping along the fence that's required as part of the zoning requirements. It's a 6-foot-high fence, and to have a 6-foot-high fence, it has to be 5 feet back from the property line and include landscaping, certain landscaping along with that, trees and shrubs. And then there's first floor, which is the area where the guests would be. Oh, let me go this way. Again, here's the deck that's proposed to the rear entry of the house. The guests would enter through there. There's a laundry room there that they are constructing. There's a staff bathroom there. There's a handicapped accessible bath in this location. A kitchen, pantry, study area, living room in this location, dining room, a sunroom, and then a sitting room. So this is where the guests would be. This is the entry off of Clark, and again, that's where staff and volunteers would enter. It's not for the guests to enter through. They come through the rear entry. On the second floor are the offices for staff. There are 3 offices. There's an office here for the executive director. There's one here for the coordinator on site, and then there's one here for the finance volunteer. There are a couple bedrooms, but those are not being used and they're not being changed. There's a bathroom up here, so it's just the office space in this location with a sunroom here. So that's where the administrative staff would be for Romero House.
So this is the proposed plans for the site. So from this and the application materials that talk about the use, Staff has evaluated it against the zoning ordinance standards as well as the special use permit criteria. We are recommending approval with conditions, but I want to talk about a couple of things that the board has to think through on how to look at this. So one of the not necessarily an issue, but unique element of a social service provider use, it is a very broad term in the zoning ordinance. So one of the elements of approving this is definitely defining the scope of what the use is. So staff has attempted to do that with its description of the office use and the hospitality uses and the incidental uses there. So I just want to reinforce it's very important for the board to be comfortable with the definition of the use and to make sure it's clear for administration purposes if the permit is approved. Secondly, we talked about parking. Social service providers within the zoning ordinance do not have a prescribed parking standard. And I can only presume it's because the range of uses are so broad, it would be hard to probably provide one standard. So one thing that is in front of the board, which I think is almost the first step you need to make in your consideration of this, is a decision of what parking standard to apply. We described to you some options based on the proposed employee count of the facility. And then we've talked about the supply of parking on the site. We recommended that at a minimum 3 parking spaces be accounted for as available for vehicle parking on the site. In the way it's proposed at this time, if 3 is the standard, the 2 off of Clark would count, and then the 1 gravel space off of the alley would count. They would be free to use the garage, but the applicant has not proposed to use the garage for vehicle parking at this point. So if they wanted to, they could, but those 3 surface spaces is what staff is saying that the board could credit as the available parking to meet that 3 vehicle parking standard. Now that's something that the board has to work through exactly. Is that the number that's appropriate? Is that what they want to apply to the site? As Ray talked about the site, the rear alley component, what we are recommending is different than what is on the site plan. So we have standards about where paved parking can exist in residential areas. In the OSFC, which is the overlay that is really the controlling element of this property, not so much the base zone, it prohibits parking lots from being in a side or front yard. It's a little different terminology than the other residential property standards we have, which says for single family home, you cannot have parking in a front yard of a property. And what makes that kind of interesting is typically we're drawing the line from the closest point of the house to the next property line, which in this case, that rear corner bisects the proposed paving area. So staff has said that based on the terminology of our code, that gravel space could not be paved because we don't allow paving in a side or front yard. We think that's most consistent with practice. That means the gravel space can be accepted. It just can't be paved under that interpretation. So once you've moved through the parking component of this, then I think you move into the analysis of what's the compatibility. So the use is clearly much different than a residential use. They're reusing a residential structure with some modifications to account for the employee use and then for the hospitality service. The proposed level of service is in the refined conditions I gave you. We have attempted to break out the full use of the property throughout the day. The first version you had on Friday was fundamentally focused on the hospitality, and questions arose about, well, what then is allowed for the other hours of the day? Employees are there, so what does that mean in terms of the social service provider? Now, no specific uses were necessarily proposed, but there were questions about what can and can't be done. So with the refined conditions, the hospitality use is changed from the proposed 20 guests at any one time and 40 guests during the hospitality hours to account for total people that would be involved in that activity. So the proposed condition now is accounting for employee, staff, volunteers, and guests that would be related to those hours of hospitality. The hospitality is between 1 to 4 on weekdays. And then on Sunday, I believe it's 10:30 to 4 is the proposal. So now the max allowances during those hospitality services is 25 people, which again accounts for the expected volunteers, staff, whoever else was going to be there, plus any guests. And the 40 is bumped up by that same 5 to 45 to account for volunteers, guests, staff, whatever that is. So in some ways, that is much easier to monitor because you are not trying to establish the purpose of the person on the property. You're just counting how many people are on the property. The second element of that is then to go back to the use of the property on the other hours of the day. So we had established on Friday that there is no residential use of the property. It is not to be used for any short-term lodging, any residential use, and no overnight stays for any purpose are permitted. So we had said essentially from 8 p.m. until 8 a.m., that was our definition of when people can't be on the property overnight. So we turned that around a little bit. We've kept that. And then we've said, well, really the regular operating hours could be viewed as from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So what else can happen in that time period? So the conditions now say that they still can have up to 3 employees, but at any one time that is not the hospitality hours, no more than 10 people can be on the property, including those employees. So if there's people that want to come and visit and discuss how Romero House works, that's fine. You can come visit the employees and do that. If you want to have some other kind of office meeting, some kind of volunteer organizing meeting, whatever that is, that's all going to be covered by the 10. So we're not interpreting why you're coming to the site for any one purpose. Again, it's a numerical standard of what that is. So that's the biggest change in the refined conditions, is to try to account for people rather than why a limited set of people and why they're there. So we're looking at this then again through how does the best access to the site. We talked about the parking in the back, but we're recommending that the access actually be from 7th Street. So there's a sidewalk on 7th, and we would have them build the walkway and put a gate through the fence to 7th Street. Staff does not believe alleys are the appropriate place to congregate pedestrians. It's an unpaved alley. It's not where we would ever direct pedestrians to be. We would say the sidewalk on 7th is a better choice to do that. So this site plan, if you would be modified, the paving in the back parking space would not occur, and the sidewalk would be rerouted as requested by staff as part of the conditions. As I look at the rest of the refined conditions, a lot of this is to understand, again, how do you keep track of the intensity of the use once you establish that use can be permitted? So we've looked at that a number of different ways. Again, I think the people counting is better. We've adjusted a little bit of the language to make it clear who's responsible for monitoring or reporting, or who you have to respond to enforce something. And then the next issue that has come up is what are these incidental or accessory activities that are under the stipulation section of the approval. So all principal uses are permitted to have accessory uses. Accessory uses have definitions of being incidental to the activity of the principal use. So in our conversations with Romero House, we asked, well, what else could be happening here beyond your principal activities, which is your office space and your hospitality service? As we went through that conversation, it was potential that staff, other people could gather there for different types of meetings. And they noted that we do on occasion would like to be able to have an event or a celebration that is not directly the 10 people or the 25 or the 45 people. So as staff, we said that could be viewed as an incidental accessory function to the social service provider. The stipulation has been revised with these conditions to say those 3 gathering events, those regular things that could happen in any one week, would be subject to the 10-person limit. And then the celebration event allowance, which is up to 5 in a year, is not limited in terms of capacity the way all the other activities are. So Again, we've tried to look at this through the lens of hours of operation as well as the intensity. Again, if this is what the board accepts as those definitions, you would take these conditions and in any motion of approval, you would replace alternative 1 with what I've presented to you. Now, if the board adds or modifies conditions, that's up to the board. I think this structure is better. If there's another way of looking at the measurement of the use and the intensity of use, we're happy to understand how that could be articulated as conditions of approval. And with that, I think I'm going to conclude our remarks and take any questions you have about the report.
Question on the parking. I remember, did we not grant a variance to another property in the neighborhood close by that had carriage house like this and was like, I was thinking it was like multifamily use, and then they put parking in the
There was
in the back. And we basically had we just had a findings of fact that said, no, that's the backyard, not the side yard. I think.
The only thing I can think of, unless Ray's going to correct me, is a few years back, there was a short-term lodging use.
That's what it was.
Which is regulated differently now. But
Okay.
at that point in time, they had to have a parking space for every room that would be rented, and they needed to construct or add on to their parking lot. I don't remember if the variance was approved. Eventually, something
I think
got
we
approved.
did. I think we
I just
did.
don't
It
remember
was-
if a variance got
Yeah.
approved.
You're correct. It was like an Airbnb.
It was related to that. Something got approved. I just don't remember the board giving a variance for it.
So what's really the difference though on this, if it's gravel or if it's paved?
The city as a requirement doesn't let you improve a non-conforming condition to make
Okay.
it more permanent.
And is that because the one requirement is that it's outside the scope of the carriage house? So like if it was a driveway to the carriage house, it'd be perfectly fine that it was paved.
Yeah. So
But
the way,
that's not
yeah.
really-
Okay. So
it's outside the,
explain the parking
yeah.
philosophy here. So the city controls paving on a property and limits it essentially to when a vehicle may be on it. It's limited to areas that directly lead to a parking space that is compliant with standards. So that could be in a garage, it could be in a backyard, it could be in a side yard, but the space itself has to be conforming, has to be in one of those legal areas. Where that is, it is not in a compliant area on the property.
Right.
You are correct though. If there was a south-facing garage door, they could pave that to get into the garage.
But we all know there's tons of non-conforming driveways in Ames. But anyway,
Yeah. So but anyone that wants to pave a gravel parking space or a
Right.
gravel driveway has to place the pavement in a compliant manner
Right.
with the code.
right.
And the applicant hasn't, they can address this in their comments. They haven't necessarily pushed back saying that they have to or need to pave that space.
And the current gravel's just for one, you don't fit two on
We
there?
we would not credit more than one.
Okay.
I don't think you could prove evidence that has been legitimately 2 parking spaces to get over the threshold of proof of true legal non-conforming status. I think we can all agree 1 has fit there before, but 2 probably has never been legally established. And you would need legally 18 feet of width to have 2 parking
Sure.
spaces, and that is not that.
Right. And can we make them park in the garage?
You can, yeah. So in terms of how do you account for the parking,
Right.
if you want to make the garage be available for parking spaces, that is, I think, within the realm of your authority.
I'm just thinking conformity. It's like,
I have a question about condition 4A. How is that?
Is that
Nope.
on my refined list?
Sorry,
Yeah.
it is your refined list, and I said it wrong.
So can you put this up so the audience can see what we're talking about?
It's about use. I lost it on the list, but it's about the requirement that they can't use the front door, or guests can't use the front door, and staff must use the rear door.
4A.
It's not 4A. I misspoke.
Oh,
I don't know which one it is.
okay, sorry.
yeah, I think
so
the staff can enter through the front, but no guests. They all-
Right, but if all the parking is in the back, for one,
Oh, but they can still use the back.
okay.
Staff can
It's
still use
not-
the back.
staff can enter from anywhere.
Yeah.
Guests may only enter for hospitality services from the rear.
And
It's
how
about
is
management of the hospitality services?
so? And how is the requirement that guests enter through the rear of the structure instead of the front? How is that arrived on?
I think it was the best sense of compatibility with the neighborhood. You have a commercial property to the south. The level of activity is above a residential use. So to direct it to the rear made the most sense to staff. The applicant proposed it originally.
Okay.
Is how they wanted to approach that, and staff believed that was the best approach rather than using the residential front yard as the approach to the service.
Right. I might have more questions later.
Sure.
Any other questions for staff? And everybody had these alternatives, right, to go kind of over, or at least.
So just for the audience, how about we put up the first page, which really breaks down the description of the use, so they can see what you've seen.
You have the first page.
Oh, did I not give that to you? Is it on the other side? Is it right there?
Okay.
Sorry. So I did share, as I sent this to you, I did share this with the applicant, so the applicant can respond to this when they speak for their time too. So what you'll see, if this is all in strikeout underline, the intent was here to be very transparent on what changed. So the concept again was to say the use as a social service provider, the Romero House, intended to serve the needs of people experiencing homelessness or effects of poverty that principally include office space for 3 staff members and supervised daily hospitality services of meals, interior rest area, laundry, and hygiene. That use then is subject to all of the conditions and stipulations that follow. And what's new in the terms of the structure is broke out the individuals from being in that paragraph to then be these 2 new standards that are here. So the hours of operation concept, the 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., that is again, as I said, that's an interpretation of how we had already structured it, but adding the clarity that the 10 people is the expectation at any one time during those non-hospitality hours. And then the hospitality service is a total of 25 people on the site at one time, inclusive of all servers, volunteers, guests, whatever that is, and then up to 45 during that same hospitality hour. So the thought is there's a peak demand at the beginning, usually when they first open, and then others may come in as time passes through their service period.
And the projection be put on the screens back here so we can.
We'll see if Channel 12 can do that. I believe they can.
Huh?
Nope.
I don't know if you can stream.
There's a delay.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
There it is.
There we go.
And I think after you've concluded with us, I'm happy to go make some quick copies of this so people can see the whole thing while the applicant is speaking. So the 1 and 2 are the main changes here. You're going to see these other smaller changes as you work through this. I think then if I go to the next page, you'll want to look at new 7. This is in reference to the contact information. So previously it had said that you had to provide a contact person to city staff, and then that the neighborhood association, there's an active neighborhood association here. Old Town has a very active neighborhood association, and they've been very involved in the overall process, very involved in understanding how Romero House has proposed this use. So the thought was that the neighborhood could benefit from having a contact. If it's a small concern or something that they wanted to ask a question about, it would facilitate a relationship there. And the Romero House would provide that contact information to the neighborhood association, not just to staff. Not that staff can't give that contact information to anybody, we could. So in this case, we were just making it clearer because it said city staff city staff's kind of ambiguous. So now it's clear it's the three most responsible departments in likelihood of who would ever respond to something here, whether it's the planning division, the inspections division, or the police department. And then just to clarify, we were in no way trying to say the neighborhood association had an administrative role in this. It was intended to be a courtesy to make it available to people that might not otherwise know how to get in contact with them. So that you see the parenthetical part there. If the Old Town representatives request it, it'll be provided. Again, no expectation that the neighborhood is somehow policing the Romero House property, has any responsibility for that whatsoever. So that was the main intent of changing 7 there. If you slide it down, I'm not sure there's a whole lot more on that page.
One quick question. What are the current activities at 709 Clark? Is it similar?
It's similar, but again, 709 is not a permitted activity.
Right.
So the idea that I would say, I'll let the applicant respond to that, but the hospitality services are transferable to here. What you would expect at 709 is to be here.
Right.
I don't believe they have office space. I don't know that.
Okay.
The main difference is 709 has live-in residents versus this site will not have any live-in residents.
Okay.
I think, again, small tweaks here just to clarify the meaning. So then if we go to the last page. Oh, I have the last page. So because we changed the terminology in terms of who is accounted for, the log requirement is now just to log everybody rather than guests. So again, we're not trying to figure out who's a guest, who's a visitor, staff, whatever that is. And then there was a question on the trees and shrubs. How does that work? It was meant to be that the trees and shrubs could not just be removed and never replaced. We just made it clear that if a tree is unhealthy, it's removed, and a tree is replanted, it doesn't need the Zoning Board of Adjustments approval to replace the tree. The main thrust of that condition was that the fence has to exist. So for compatibility purposes, having the fenced rear yard to kind of separate the level of activity from the surrounding area and staff size was important. So the key element of that condition was that the fence has to always be maintained and be in place. And then the vegetation is part of the fence compatibility requirements.
On that note, there's not currently a gate onto 7th.
There is not.
Do we know, can you put the site back up where the proposed is, just for information?
So the way the staff's recommended condition is they had to work with staff to locate a gate in a manner where the sidewalk could extend out to 7th Street and then back to their rear entry.
Okay. That's how I assumed it was probably going to be in that general area.
And the applicant's aware of that. I don't believe they're opposed to that. We just haven't spent time figuring out the exact location for that. So back to that last page of conditions. Where did we stop? I think we talked about.
You were just on 13.
We're on 13. Okay. The landscaping again. That's just if it's replaced, that's fine. And then the last two clarifications, just on 17, we just added for clarity that you must meet the code requirements and maintain your consistency with the city codes. We don't list every code here. You're subject to all the city codes, whether they're a condition or not. The 17 was just to try and add a little more transparency that is the expectation of the permit as you get your permits and you maintain consistency with those permits. And then the last one, which I touched on, was the stipulations of the special use permit for the incidental activities. That's again, incidental, which is now 3 times a week, is subject to the 10-person limit. The other event celebrations are not, but they're limited to 5 times a year. And that's the refined conditions from staff.
All right. Any other questions? All right. If the applicant is here and like to address the board, may do so at this time.
Make copies.
We'll make like 10 or 12 copies.
Sure.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
All right. You may go ahead.
Yeah, here you go. David Thielen, the executive director of the Romero House. here to answer your questions. I know there are a lot of questions back and forth about the conditions. We'd be more than happy to address those here in a second. I just wanted to do a quick overview of really three basic criteria that I think really hit hard on this special use permit. When the city council said there's going to be one lot on 7th Avenue between Clark and Duff, and I think 3 lots on 6th and Clark, just looking at the map, it looked pretty clear to us that 702 is a really good location for this one site. And that's why I want to hit on a few things as to why we feel that 702 Clark is the ideal location. Kelly, could you put up a map of Clark? Or maybe the site development? Yeah. Thank you. So if you look to the west, which is Clark Avenue, we have no direct home in front of us. It's just Clark Avenue. There is a Cyride drop-off point right in front of the house. We'll talk about that here in a second, but it's helpful to us when we have volunteers or guests that want to use Cyride or walk versus using cars. We don't need a lot of automobiles on the lot to make this mission work. But if you look to the south, we have Fairway. We abut to 7th Avenue and Fairway, which to us is the perfect location because you have the traffic, you have the pedestrians already in that area. So if you look on the map, we feel that 7th Avenue to the south is perfect for us to have this location. If you look to the east, which is the backyard, you have the alley. And then if you look to the north, you have the only direct neighbor in the neighborhood, 706 Clark. If you look inside your staff report, you'll see a letter of recommendation from that neighbor who's been in the neighborhood for years and has seen us operate for the last 4 years and highly recommends that we have the special use permit. So I just wanted to point that out. The only direct neighbor that we have advocates for the Romero House. We talked a little bit about why we had the rear entrance. Right now at 709, it's just a front entrance, and there's a lot of traffic that can congregate on Clark, and we don't want that. So we're looking out for the best interest of the neighborhood on this. We feel with a 6-foot high fence and the fence now on 7th Avenue where the traffic already is, they can walk into the entrance to the rear, which is an ADA door, which we're not required to do. We thought it'd be a good addition for those that need accessibility. So that's where everybody will enter. The 6-foot high fence will hide most of the pedestrian traffic, which he thinks is important. And the rear entrance, of course, you won't have any traffic on Clark except for the 2 to 3 employees, myself included, that enter through Clark. So I think that's important for the neighborhood to keep it really quiet on Clark Avenue. We feel we only need 3 parking spots. I know the city put a recommendation or credit for 5. We have 2 full-time employees on one of them on the upstairs level, so there's 2 of us. Typically across the street, when it's residential use only at 709, we'll have 1 volunteer that will be a supervising volunteer. It's a live-in staff member of the Romero House. He'll just walk across the street. So no parking is needed for that particular person. It's really just the 2. And then maybe if we have an additional volunteer, we'd have the 3. So we think 3 is a really good spot for us. 2 in the front and then 1 in that gravel spot. We want to pave it, but we could live with the gravel if we had to. And to answer your question too, Chad, we could use that carriage house for parking if we need to. Okay. I want to talk about the operations because I think this is important. We're not talking 8 to 5. We're talking a very small window in the afternoon of 1 to 4 on weekdays. And typically at that 1 to 4, 1 to 1:45 is the peak. So you'll see most of the guests come in for a meal at that time. And then about 3:30, 3:45, you'll see maybe 5 or 6 people in the house. So it really starts to taper off as you get deeper into the 3-hour window. But the way I looked at it, if you're on Clark Avenue and you leave for work in the morning, we're not open. When you get home at night on Clark Avenue, we're not open. It's a 1 to 4. Saturdays we're closed, and then Sundays typically is our biggest day, 10:30 to 4. We could have upwards of 40, 45 people. But again, what Kelly outlined in the conditions, we're good with that limit of 45 and no more than 25 people in the house at any given time. I think one of the biggest things too on operations is the fact that we have an ecosystem in place on Clark Avenue. We have Food at First, we have a Good Neighbor, now we have Romero House. the traffic is already there. So if we can take them off the streets from 1 to 4, give them their afternoon meal, showers, laundry, and then have them walk over to Food at First, it takes them off the streets pretty much for the full day. The ecosystem also includes the library, where they're there in the morning, usually from 9 till we open at 1. So, the one thing we keep on thinking about, Ames has a homeless issue right now. How do we address it? Keeping that ecosystem in place is how we address it. The people are already there. Does it make sense to have us 3 blocks away or 4 blocks away from the ecosystem? It makes sense to have it right where it's at right now. So I just wanted to point that out. Another big area is the safety aspect. We have video cameras on the outside and the inside of the house. We can replay those at any given time. If somebody's causing a disturbance, we'll ask them to leave. Could be for the day, could be for a week, could be for a month, or we'll no trespass them. And we've done that. We're not afraid to do it. We want a nice, calm house. And I think with the code of conduct that we have when you walk in the house, you can see everything that's required of a guest. If they don't meet that, they're not going to be in the Romero house. So I think that's important too. We've just teamed up with the homeless outreach support team, which is a collaboration of the Ames Police Department, Mary Greeley, mental health, and Arch, which has really turned out to be a really nice program. We actually sit at the table every Friday here at the City Hall offices with that team. We're involved in communication with those that need help, so we can really pinpoint from the macro down to the micro who needs the most help. And I think that communication, that collaboration with the city has really helped out. We're not on our own little island. Like I think a year ago, everybody was on their own little island. Now one big island with this host team. So I pray that host continues to get funded by the city and the county, because it's really turned into a nice program. Finally, I want to hit on experience. Experience as a social service provider. If you had somebody coming into Clark, 7th and Clark, 702 Clark, that didn't have any social service background or experience, that would be an issue. We've learned over the years what works, what doesn't work. Our hospitality model today works. Guests that use the services like it. In fact, some said it's saved their lives. So we're actually serving a purpose in a community. And if anything has come out of this ordeal over the last year, between all the meetings, the zoning and planning, the city council meetings, historical preservation commission meetings, and now this meeting, is we're bringing the city together on an issue. We may disagree respectively, but we're bringing the city together on an issue that we think is very important to the city. Finally, we hit all the conditions that was in the application, satisfactory with findings of fact. We agreed to the conditions that are laid out for us, the 17 conditions. We have no issue with that. So with that, I want to thank you for listening, and I'll open up to any questions you may have.
Anybody have questions for the applicant?
So I'm not sure, but is the requirement that guests be required to use the back entrance one of these conditions, or is that something you're imposing as the owner?
We actually stated that to the city in our application that that's something we want to do.
Okay.
Just for us now to log their names and make sure that we have consistency on that, but also to keep Clark Avenue quiet.
Right.
We want to make sure that the neighbors continue to like us in the neighborhood. And that's why it was our recommendation. And I think the city actually liked that as well.
So we're not requiring that all the unhoused people use the rear entrance. They're requiring that. I feel better.
Okay.
We are requiring
We
it.
are.
We are
It is-
requiring
it
it,
is a
but they
condition.
suggested.
They offered it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is a
Their
condition
idea.
of
I
approval.
think the
It is
logistics
expected.
were that it works for them, so
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
they're not opposed to it, so.
No.
I have a question maybe for both you and Kelly, and it's just more of a maybe point of clarification, understanding. So you mentioned the bus stop in front of the house. There's been a bench long before you brought the property.
Right.
But is there any, if that remains or whatever, or doesn't, like, I'm just curious, and maybe you know already or don't, is there any liability on the Romero house since that bench exists and they didn't put it there, but it maintained, like, like if somebody were to like have a stroke or something, you know what I mean? Like if somebody trips and falls, or I just, are they aware of any unforeseen liability that if it stays, so it's now going to be an occupied property? And that would be the question I would have for anybody that's in that property.
So in terms of the bench specifically, there's two parts to it. It's in the right of way with no permit, so city can remove that at any time. It's not anybody's property once you put it in the right of way. Secondly, in this permit, we do talk about not keeping things that people could rest on, sit on on the property or adjacent to the right of way. So this bench will be going away either through city forces or through Romero action if this permit's approved.
Okay.
So future liability, all that, I don't think it's going to matter because it's going to go away one way or the other. And we all agree we don't know who, but we know that they didn't put it there because
Right.
they didn't own the property when that appeared. It's been there for a little while.
Who is the neighbor to the east? With the cars you can see in the back, behind,
What
across the
was
alley.
that?
Oh, it'd be YSS is directly behind
that's
us,
the-
and the alley separates the two.
Rosedale?
Rosedale, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I knew that was right there. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, at this time, any members of the audience who wish to speak in support or in opposition to the appeal may do so. Please approach. Make sure you have your orange card and we will swear you in.
Chad, can I just verify like how the first two items didn't have anybody speak? I just want
Name and
to
address.
point out the applicant will have a rebuttal at the end of the public comment
Yeah.
before the hearing's closed, correct?
Sure. All right. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
And your name and address?
Ann Kinsel, 720 Duff Avenue, Ames.
Okay.
First thing, this public hearing needs to be adjourned and continued. The public has not had an opportunity of notice this evening. We do have the opportunity to be heard, but the legal point of notice and opportunity to be heard requires notice. Passing out a piece of paper during the middle of the meeting does not afford the public the opportunity of notice for changes that were made to the packet that was earlier distributed. Furthermore, the changes were apparently distributed to the applicant, but not to the public at large. We simply did not have the opportunity as members of the public to prepare adequately in response to the new special conditions contained in this new language. So what I would ask first that this meeting be adjourned and continued.
Okay. Your motion's denied.
Thank you. Secondly, I want to commend the staff for the exemplary list of conditions that they're imposing on this applicant. But the issue here is not the list of conditions. The issue is how they're going to be enforced. And I see nothing in this document that was earlier shared with us, and in a quick perusal of this new information, do I see anything that suggests how this will be enforced? These conditions are extremely technical. They require a lot of monitoring. Am I to understand that the members of the public are to monitor all these conditions and then report to the city if they're not followed?
Ma'am, you're required to give testimony, not ask questions.
And
So
so
if you have questions,
my-
you can direct those to staff later.
Certainly. So my testimony is that there is no mechanism to enforce this except public intervention. This has obviously not worked in the past because the Romero House has operated extrajudiciously during past years at their other property. Thank you.
Thank you. Hand your card to Natalie, please.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. And do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Absolutely, yes.
Name and address, please.
Ianca Mitchell Conway, 203 South Fifth Street, Ames, Iowa.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so I have volunteered at the Romero House as well as having attended one of their services of religious worship as a guest. Every time I've been there, it has been a professional and safe environment. I have seen ARC responders in the Romero House. I feel that if this is approved, which I am in favor of, that there would be ARC and other community organizations that would help police them and not fall upon the neighbors exclusively. Because I have seen ARC, they are active there, they are proactive. There are people who go to house as volunteer consistently who have background in these fields. I have always felt very safe there. They have some wonderful dogs. They have a wonderful dog and 2 cats that are incredibly friendly, and they really do not have any signs of witnessing violent people at all. Like, the dog just walked right up to me, trusted every person they ever saw, like, amazing feeling. So I really believe that Romero House has made great progress and that they are able to work with ARC and other organizations to help self-police without burdening the neighbors, and that their religious worship ceremonies are peaceful, polite, and quiet, and very culturally enriching. Thank you. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you. All right. You swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Kate Gregory, 803 Kellogg.
Okay.
And my comments here tonight are informed by the fact that I live within 1 block of 4 other service providers in Old Town. And I lived across from YSS for a year, or for all that time. And living in this neighborhood for 4 years with Romero Houses that operates today at 709 Clark. And I appreciate the work that you're doing. And it's been, as you probably know, a big issue for our community for the last 6 months. And we're here where we are. So we're trying to just make the best of what we can do going forward. So I appreciate your help in this area. There are 3 areas I'd like to talk about tonight. The first is safety and security. I wish that you would consider, or I ask that you consider, requiring Romero House to develop a safety and security plan. If you're going to have 20 to 40 people in a building, an old wood building at any given time, the risk of derecho, tornado, fire, active shooter are all possible things, likely things, if you think about it, here in our community. If something like that were to happen and there were to be somebody injured and there was an investigation, certainly they'd come back and they'd say, well, what were they required to do? Did they have a plan to deal with tornadoes, which are very common in this area, to deal with fires in an old brick house, in an old wood house? And it wouldn't reflect very well on the city or on those of you who are trying to decide what their permit should say. I personally have been in all of those situations in non-home situations. And I can tell you from firsthand, it's a lot better when you have a plan of how you're going to deal with a fire with a bunch of people, or a tornado with a bunch of people, or even an active shooter with a bunch of people. So I would suggest that you consider requiring development of a safety and security plan, really for the benefit of the people in Romero House. Second, I'd like to talk about the number of people that are allowed at the building. If you just think about where you live, what it's like when, say, your next door neighbor or the person across the street has an event, maybe graduation, maybe a party, or they have 15 or 20 people, that's a lot of traffic in and out. You can imagine living next door or across the street or catty corner and having 40 people in and out, 45 people in and out, allowed from really not just in the afternoon, but from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., as Mr. Dykeman said. That's a lot of traffic. That's very disruptive. If you think about having those people congregate as they wait to get in the building or out of the building, which they're allowed to do because sidewalks are public property, I think that you can realize that is a burden on the people who live around there. And you might say, well, it's all on Clark Avenue. But you go catty corner to Clark Avenue, or if you're in the YSS house behind it, that's a lot of people in your community. And it's based on our experience with this for the last 4 years. This isn't something that might happen. This is what happens today. I'm on the Old Town Board. Let me share with you something that one of my neighbors emailed me, a neighbor who lives in proximity to the Romero House.
Ma'am, you need to keep your comments to your,
Okay.
you can't quote somebody else.
Okay,
It's
well,
hearsay.
I have observed verbal harassment. I don't go down Clark Avenue anymore because I've been verbally harassed. And during the day, there are so many cars there, it's hard to get your car down the street. So it's a tough situation. Based on our experience with Romero House, as it has been, we want to make it better going forward. We want to have a positive relationship with Romero House. but we'd wish that you'd require them to meet us halfway in these cases. Lastly, I just like to talk about a recommendation I made to the city, which I'm not sure whether they passed on to you, but they didn't include in this. And this really goes to Romero House's comments about wanting to be a part of the community. For 4 years, they've been in our neighborhood, and we'd like them to be a member of our neighborhood, like all the other social service providers are. But they have made really no effort to get to know the neighborhood. They've certainly never reached out to the Old Town Association to talk about the issues, which you would have thought they might have beginning last summer when there were over 100 people who showed up in opposition to this additional use. It would go a long way if Romero House would try to meet the neighbors halfway. If they would reach out and say, hey, here's how we're going to operate, and this is what you should do if things don't go the way you want. Hey, what have we done that hasn't been helpful to you? Hey, how can we become a part of your neighborhood? YSS has been terrifically successful in our neighborhood, in a large part due to the fact that they have tried to be a partner with us. And I would just ask that you would consider recommending to Romero House that they try to meet the neighborhood halfway. Otherwise, the last 6 months are just going to be an introduction to what the future is going to be. Thank you very much.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
The current number of people is obviously 25, no more than 25 at one time, and then 45. So what would your suggestion be?
Well, my suggestion would be 10, because I think about when people who live around me have events at their house. And if it happened every day, a one-off, okay, great. Have a party, have a celebration. But every day, having all those people go in and out, all those people carrying trays of food, all those people carrying in supplies, that's a lot of traffic. And this street has kids on it. We want people to be able to walk back and forth to Fairway, which some Fairway employees don't any longer. We think that 10 people would be more than enough in that building at any given time. Thank you very much.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
And your name and address, please?
My name is Denise Stanton. I live at 902 Douglas.
Okay.
Okay. So I've lived in Ames for over 50 years. 48 of those years have been in Old Town. Almost 45 of those years I've owned a home at 9th and Douglas. I actually am a former employee of YSS, and I actually lived at the 712 house as one of my jobs in college. So I have some familiarity with how these systems work. But as a homeowner, I also know what it's like when a very large facility moves in. And some 30 years ago, a developer decided they were going to build a very large apartment building next to me. They did so and started the construction without permission. It went to the planning, to this board, and it was very clear from my attorney and several other attorneys that there was a code there that said that they could not do what they were doing. But because they'd already invested a great deal of money and they'd already started construction, the board that was in place at that time allowed them to do it. This has been a very interesting 30 years with a lot of people living next door to me and very close to me, because although there were promises made and requirements made by the board at that time concerning elevation and landscaping and fencing, none of those were ever followed through on. None of those ever came to pass. And so there's been a great deal of damage to my property, destruction to my property. And of course, when you have that many people living in a very small area, basically a lot and a half, many of whom, of course, are transient, and they don't usually stay in that apartment building for very long. You don't have a real pride in property sort of feeling that ownership might provide. Many of those people have been involved in what I would call pharmaceutical sales, which makes life very interesting. My point being that over the past few months in going through this process with the Romero House, I've had some flashbacks about how many of the procedures I've seen have played fast and loose, I think, a little bit with the codes and the ordinances that have been suggested that should provide certain guardrails on this and have not been followed. That's been very clear to me. I come to you as a cautionary tale that when this board does not follow through or keep track of the promises that have been made, those things fall apart. And it greatly impacts certainly impacted the enjoyment I have in my own home, the safety I have that I feel with my own home, living to a very transient population. It makes it very difficult to be a homeowner. And actually, my greater point is when the city does not adhere to its own codes and its own ordinances and follow through on their promises, it creates a great distrust with the people who live in that community. And I know that I certainly have huge trust issues with the city because of that, my experience. And this is not, this whole experience in the last year has really conjured up a lot of those feelings again. So thank you.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Your name and address, please.
Shelley Orngard, 928 Burnett. And I did provide comments, written comments earlier. You may have them already. So I live in Old Town and have observed the changes in the neighborhood over the past year with the increase of homelessness. Romero House is now applying for a special use permit to provide services to the homeless population, and I'm offering a vote against issuing a special use permit, especially at this time. The proposed site is a residential, single-family, and historic neighborhood that is incompatible with the proposed use. However, if the city chooses to issue a special use permit now or at some time in the future, Romero House should be required to demonstrate adequate health and safety practices and to be a good neighbor wherever it is located. So there are two kind of subject areas that I want to talk about. And one in particular, I don't think has really been adequately addressed for a shelter of this site. And I think it is a shelter. First of all, to establish good health and safety training and management practices. According to U.S. News and World Report, in a report that was published in April 17th, 2024, an extensive study shows that more than 2/3 of homeless persons are actively experiencing serious drug and/or mental health issues. And that percentage is increasing. With offering extensive services to the homeless 12 hours per day, including food, and this is, I read the application, I didn't always, may not have adequately understood everything that was being proposed, but they talked about a rest area or a napping area or something like that. I didn't see reference to a specific room for that. I don't know how that's being accommodated. But hospitality through food, not sure what all hospitality is referring to. Showers and laundry are a part of it. Romero House staff should be prepared to work with this special population. The industry standard for a homeless shelter, from what I haven't worked in a shelter, but I've worked with at-risk populations and have done, especially since this advent in the last year, done a lot of reading about how do we address the issue of homelessness in our country. The industry standard for a homeless shelter would include drug and mental health first aid training and de-escalation and intervention training. Insufficient training and safety measures would have negative consequences for staff and clients and may not help the city of Ames address its growing homeless population. I don't know, you may not have attended the meeting on Monday where Old Town residents were invited to come and talk with the city. And it's not that we're trying to address blame and fault, but there are issues with the homeless populations many times, and maybe inadequate ways of addressing those problems. And so if you're working with the homeless population, a staff, just common sense, safety, it would seem that training in how to de-escalate difficult situations should be a requirement. There are many sources of information on how to run a low barrier shelter, and a low barrier meaning there's not a high barrier to entering the facility. There's a low barrier. Most people are welcomed, as I understand it, unless they're clearly under the influence of drugs or alcohol. So what I think that they're proposing is a low barrier shelter, and places like the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the National Alliance to End Homelessness Resource Center, and the homeless and the Homeless and Housing Resource Center have a lot of instruction and training in how to work with this population. So the other thing then is to be a good neighbor. In addition to operational safety, any social service agency operating in Ames should be required to be a good neighbor, providing avenues to report and address problems that arise due to its existence. For example, in the past, homeless persons have engaged in antisocial behaviors, including verbal abuse of residents and sleeping on private properties and leaving refuse and excrement. Romero House has a role to play in educating its clients regarding safety and behavior, not just while on the property, but while in the neighborhood. The City of Ames is conducting a study of local homelessness and developing a plan to address it. Establishing a homeless shelter in Old Town is premature. A much better approach would be to wait until the study is completed and an overall plan is developed. Attention should be paid to establishing adequate permit requirements that include providing proper safety training and oversight to staff and clients, and cultivating good neighbor practices. Thank you.
Debbie Carter, 709
No,
Douglas. I
you-
swear to tell the truth.
Thank you.
I sent y'all a letter today. I don't know if you read it, and it's kind of in a big mess now because things are all intertwined with changes. So I'll try to make sense out of what I have left, but I want to point out that this has nothing to do with the good service that Romero House provides. This is all about the wrong location for the good service that Romero House provides, and the impact it has on 350 property owners that bought zoned property for single-family conservation overlay, that had their zoning changed for one property that is going to function as a commercial property in a residential district. So you got that out of there. Okay. So first of all, the reasons you should not support it. The use being reviewed is a commercial use and is best served in a commercial area. Some history. At the October 8th City Council meeting, Councilman Member Garten noted it was important to understand best practices of peer communities. Director Diekman shared in response that in neighboring communities, social service providers typically operate as a commercial use. So there is not a one-size-fits-all approach. He then reviewed the zones as the municipal code currently allows here in Ames, where it would be appropriate for the applicant to select a property to operate. He highlighted the high-density nature of those areas, stating that non-residential uses spark concerns with concentration and separation requirements in neighborhoods.
Ma'am, if I can stop you, I think the city council's already approved this, so that's not what's before us tonight. Before us is whether or not
Right, I
we
know
are
they've
approving.
approved it,
So
but.
we don't need a recitation
Okay,
of the
okay, we
procedures
won't
and
do
his.
that. I won't talk about council.
If you would address the conditional use permit itself.
Okay. So there are things which you were supposed to consider in doing this. One of them is the loss of residential land.
And need you to speak into the mic.
Okay, the loss of residential land in the neighborhood. And this request at 702 Clark does just that. It also negatively affects the entire 700 block of Clark Avenue and 7th Street within the single-family overlay district. The Ames Romero house use at 709 Clark has had negative effects on the 700 block of Clark, which provides us with history of negative effect. They've been operating illegally since 2020, I think. Okay, secondly, another one of your conditions, a loss of residential land should be accompanied by a justifiable relationship to the benefit. In this case, there is no need to lose residential land because the availability of alternative locations in appropriately zoned areas offer opportunities. I won't say that was discussed at council. Okay, in reference to the aim to be sufficiently desirable for the entire community that the loss of residential land is justifiable. This is not the case. It is desirable to the community that the Ames Romero house locate out of the 6th, 7th Street corridor. Since the opening of the Romero house, the community has been disadvantaged by the concentration of homeless camping and loitering from the library, downtown, and in the neighborhood, which is a direct result of the Ames Romero house location, which encourages the homeless to congregate in one area 24/7. This is a negative community impact. It's going to grow. So what you do today, people are going to be affected every time they go to the library, every time they go to the post office. These are real things, real effects from the location of too many social services too dense together. It's also known that homeless have more anxiety when they are all stuck together because a lot of them have trouble with societal interactions. So you've got all your services right here. You've got all these people right here. And we see the effects of that. I see them every day. If you haven't been down there, you might not even know they're in Ames. But if you're downtown, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And your citizens in downtown are at that library and at that post office every day. And it's just going to get worse. So what you do is very important. It's not a service that's the problem, it's the location they chose. Okay, from General Standards B, it is asserted that one can find that such use will not change the essential character of the area in which it is proposed. That's absolute nonsense. Of course, this use does change the essential character of the city block in this neighborhood, and it has. We've seen it. We have had time to witness this, almost 5 years. Whether crime, belongings, litter, trash, carts, number of strangers, loitering, camping, or in social interactions, we have witnessed this. Also, crimes from the 700 block of Clark Avenue were recorded in the city report that you got and are indication of the negative effect the location of the Ames Romero house has had in the 700 block of Clark. And these are just the crimes reported. The Ames police recognize the need for and advise a camera surveillance provision. If you approve this, I sure hope you do that. But that is not enough. To recap, increased crime, without a doubt, affects the safety, security, and sense of place in this residential block. And the residents already experienced that due to the current location of the Ames Romero house. Okay. Further, and I can't go through most of this because everything's changed, and I, again, don't feel like I had proper notice for that. But per the Romero House's own words, which I wrote down and you heard in person tonight, we are in business only for the afternoon hours. This is from the report. I'm not quoting somebody. And are closed before most people in the vicinity come home from work. We believe this is a major point for the SUP, as our hours are limited to a 3-hour block in the afternoon and mainly during weekday hours, their own words. Yet their ancillary activities requests for activities, I think maybe now it's 3, who knows, 5, nights a week in a residential area is in direct conflict with their own reasoning of why they should be a permitted use in the neighborhood. The request for the night services is a big leap from what they swore to, and you've read all through their report. Completely different time frame for neighborhoods and families. Okay, so you don't care about that. I'm getting to the end here. So I want to point out that the Ames Romero House's broad statement of neighborhood support is actually very weak. The Ames Romero House states, "We are protected on all sides of the property without risk of any neighbor who might have objections to our SUP. Fairway has been a big supporter of the Ames Romero House, and our only direct next door neighbor is at 706 Clark Avenue." To clarify the above statement, Fairway does not recommend the special use permit. At least one neighbor in the northern end of the 700 block of Clark spoke against the request at the council member. It's in the record, and filed a trespass against a person sleeping on their porch. The Ames Romero House puts great emphasis on the neighbor to the north being a big advocate, but it should be noted that the neighbor to the north is Christian E. Martin, who per the Story County Assessor's Office site is shown as the purchaser of the very property, 702 Clark, in 2020 for $225,000. And the seller of that same property in 2024 to the Oscar Romero Trust for $300,000. That business-type financial relationship is not a typical residential neighbor relationship. So in conclusion, this is really a difficult SUP request because the requester, Ames Romero House, wanted the look, the feel of a very special historic residential single-family home. They really wanted that orange house. But they also request the flexibility and options only available in commercial zoning areas. There are, I will repeat, 350 properties in the single family conservation overlay, which was put in because so many social service agencies had taken over homes in our neighborhood. It's cheaper, buy a house, don't go to a building. That is the reason for that zoning. So those 350 properties had good faith in their city and the zoning existing when they purchased their homes. Biggest probably investment most of them will ever make. These residents have a right to neighborhood. The requester, Ames Romero House, did not show any way that they evaluated any other properties that were properly zoned. None. They wanted that orange house. Instead, they purchased this property that was zoned residential, and they purchased it for commercial use. Thank you.
You swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes, I do.
Name and address, please.
Elizabeth Grafton Robertson, 703 Grand Avenue, Ames.
Go ahead.
I don't have a nicely written out speech like everybody else, but what is community? I am thankful for the Romero House because often I am hungry to go there to eat. People that come there are always respectful. They did, that Romero House offered the community. Last year, they had a band in the springtime around this time. They invited the whole community. The fire department came and let people sit in the fire truck. Police officers came. They got a permit to block off the street. They served food for everybody in the neighborhood. Some neighborhood people came to the Easter egg hunt. They have tried to be cordial to the community. People, they don't encourage people to go sleep at the library. People do that on their own, and that's been cut down recently because every week there's a police officer that comes weekly to the Romero office and comes in. The ARC, someone from the hospital comes there weekly. Someone every once a week comes from the Bridge Home to sit there and help people try to find places to live. The guests are very honorable there. They are quiet. There's rules on the wall: no swearing, no drinking, no drugs. I have not seen any of that done. The backyard, someone might play football. People are respectful of each other. It's handy when I don't own a car right now for me to walk to and have a meal and just a nice glass of water with people and conversation. Board games are played. People who you wouldn't expect to be getting out a Bible today were getting out a Bible and showing what they had learned. People that have been homeless, but you can only park on one side of the street, so you can get down the street because there are certain there's signs there that you have to obey or you'll get moved. There's I don't picture myself having anxiety, and I am a attendant or a guest there. I just want people to think about what is community and that it is a safe place, and they're very friendly and only are trying to help people, because when you have to leave the homeless shelter, the Bridge Home, by 9 a.m., people can have to wait. There's no food at first meal at lunchtime. It's at evening. On Sunday, there's no lunch or lunch. So a meal could be breakfast. A meal could be eaten Sundays, and a prayer is said. The guests all say what they're thankful for, and a prayer is said. And so I don't picture people using drugs and drinking alcohol or doing anything as this is going on. I've never seen this happen there, and I'm very appreciative for the Romero House that people can come charge their phones. The library doesn't open up till 1 o'clock Sunday, and I think this relieves some of the tension of people just sitting there. There's a place to go and a place to eat, and people are thankful for the Romero House.
You swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Name and address, please.
David Carter, 709 Douglas. I mailed comments to you, so presumably all those have been forwarded and should be in the record. I want to make 2 points, I guess. One is that I don't believe the board and the public can adequately evaluate the conditions with the late arrival of modifications. And secondarily, well, maybe even more important, this SUP, if approved, definitely requires conditions to make it effective and fulfill the goals of the zoning in our community. And the fundamental thing you need to realize is that it is immortal. It's not ever going to go away. And so the conditions you put on it are essential, that you get them right, correct at the outset. And I think as the late term modifications demonstrate, there's some questions and issues that need more consideration. And I think I certainly don't feel I've had an opportunity to evaluate what's been proposed during the meeting. I think you should take that and reflect on it and continue the hearing and make your decision at your next meeting.
Well, your motion is denied if that's if you're making a motion that we
No,
continue
I'm
this.
not, I'm not making a motion.
Okay.
No.
And your second point was?
Those are 2 points.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Thank you.
You swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I swear to firmly tell the truth. I just want to say a few words of comfort for those. I know I'm a newer Ames resident who graduated recently and has chosen to stay in Ames, but
Name and address, please.
Ella Townsend, 1715 Copper Beach Avenue.
Thank you.
No, pardon?
Thank you.
No problem, sir. I want to assure and offer a few things of comfort is that, number one, as someone who's a long-term volunteer, we are frequently retrained on de-escalation, and there's an emphasis on a culture of calmness and a culture of sobriety at the Romero House. In fact, our Wi-Fi password currently is drugs are bad. So whenever our guests ask for the Wi-Fi password, we deadpan look at them and tell them that. But we genuinely do encourage good behavior, for lack of a better term, and just like a culture of that. Respecting the neighborhood is something that we encourage when our guests maybe are telling us a story of something they did. And we're like, that's maybe not good. You should go pick that can up. We genuinely encourage and support that culture of wanting our guests to be good neighbors, because even before the Romero House came to be, they have been roaming that area and lived there, just not in a house. And so we encourage, I guess, that spirit of good neighborhood in our guests. Another thing I want to share about like nighttime activities. My fiance currently is a live-in volunteer, and this is not going to be more homeless outreach or more work at night necessarily. Sometimes we play Dungeons and Dragons at night. We would hate for the operation to get stopped for activity like that. This is currently in the yellow house where they live, not the orange house, just for clarification. It would be social activities that the volunteers partake in usually, not further outreach. And then I guess just lastly, the Romero House wants to alleviate stresses like the library and the post office. And we want to have a place and a time where people aren't potentially loitering at those locations and are instead coming to our house, eating a meal, communicating with us, and we just have some shared community with them that encourages them to maybe make better choices in the future if we can. I promise that we are encouraging a spirit of good neighborhood in those we serve, though.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I told him the truth.
All right. And name and address, please.
I'm Sam Galindo. I live at 3211 Eisenhower Avenue. So I've heard some concerns about, like I said, or as like Ella said, about de-escalation and, things adjacent to that, concerns about crime and drugs at the house. I'm also a longtime volunteer, and I've never seen anything of the sort in all the time that I've volunteered there. Even when you enter the house, any sort of drugs or anything criminal is immediately prohibited anywhere within the premises of the house. And furthermore, the operations for the house is only around 12 to 4, which is around the time most people are at work, and they will likely not run into these sort of things. What I also wanted to say was that the people even the guests who come to the house, they're not dangerous people. As stated before, we already do prohibit these sorts of activities within the house, and we do enforce it. There was concerns about not, being some sort of safety plan or a de-escalation plan for us. But when I began as a volunteer, the very first thing that they offered us was a de-escalation plan. part of the instructions for being a volunteer is that any sort of escalation or tension, conflict between any of the guests is supposed to be de-escalated so as to foster a culture of tranquility within the house. So there is, in regards to concerns about drugs or crime, I've not seen any of those things, and I don't think that it is a real concern. I mean, the fact that there are people, homeless people congregating in or around the area, I mean, those people, like Ella said, have been there before the Romero House started operating, and they will continue to be there after the Romero House operates there. So, I mean, the Romero House, it can come and go, but the homeless people who live around that area will always be there. So, and as was previously stated, they have to wait quite a long while for the food at first meal at night. So the Romero House offers a meal in or around that 12 to 4 length of time, in the day. So again, I just wanted to reaffirm that in my time, as a long-term volunteer at the Romero House, I've never seen any serious concern about drugs or crime.
Thank you. You swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Name and address, please.
I'm Donna Nelson of 618 9th Street, and I'm expecting you to try to cut me off, but I have about 2 minutes of stuff to say, so I please would like to have the opportunity to say it. I bought a house, the one I'm living in now, in 2017. I researched the zoning. My architecture daughter and son-in-law researched the zoning. I'm going to look each one of you in the eye before I make a couple of statements. I've lived on a farm, acreages, rural areas. I've lived in Omaha, Nebraska, which is now considered, depending on how big you draw the circle, a community of 1 million. Never before the last couple of years have I ever been in a city where my own city council person, I realize you say that's water under the bridge, but that's why I'm speaking tonight, looks me in the eye and tells me, a tax-paying citizen of this community, that she has sympathy for those of us who are having our zoning gutted, but that she has more sympathy for the people living on the street, homeless, near homeless, etc.
Okay, ma'am, I'm going to cut you off because we're not responsible for the zoning. We're responsible for the consideration of the special use permit.
But it's,
So you need to present testimony based on the special use permit.
I have a connection to Old Town, but this is me speaking. In late 2020 and in 2021 especially, I started noticing that it wasn't comfortable for me to walk down Clark anymore, especially at night. I've basically quit being a pedestrian in my Old Town community because of things that have happened to me right up to the present time. I don't understand why the person who just spoke ahead of me emphasized that all of the Romero House activities are going to be consolidated into that daytime block, but yet they're asking for the 8 to 8 thing. But my final comment is, do existing residents who had good zoning ever get any recourse in this process? And you're our last hope to consider what we're going through and the safety of our neighborhood, and maybe keep our neighborhood existing as it did when some of us chose to move into it or stay in it. Thank you.
You swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Name and address, please.
Peter Halleck at 1114 or 114 9th Street. Or, sorry, 114 8th Street. I'm nervous.
It's all right.
I'm probably going to be one of the least contentious people up here, but I am neutral. I'm not arguing against or for the proposal, but I do have some concerns with what was included in the write-up. I happen to currently be the president of the Old Town Neighborhood Association. I had a lot of concerns when I was reading the staff report just this afternoon. Most of those were addressed with the revisions that were just handed out during the meeting here. But I still, we have a Old Town Neighborhood Association board of 9 people. I think a simple change would be to make the Old Town Neighborhood Association board reference rather than the president of the Old Town Neighborhood Association in the conditions. Beyond that, I just wanted to comment a couple of things. I think the staff is totally accurate in their recommendation to change the access. It's ridiculous that there was a consideration of having access off a gravel alley that has no snow removal and everything. It's much more appropriate that the access be taken down to the public walk along 7th Street. That just makes a lot of sense. The whole idea that Romero House would propose that their guests suffer the indignity of having to go up a gravel alley to get access just doesn't make sense to me, but it's just a side comment. But anyway, I think I particularly originally had concerns that it appeared that somehow the neighborhood association was being pulled into the enforcement side of things. I think the parenthetical that was put in the revised staff report addressed that. And so with that, that's my comment.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, how many more members of the audience wish to address the board? Okay.
Ian didn't hear you. She wants you to speak
Oh,
up.
how many more members of the audience wish to address the board? Are there any more? I just wanted kind of a count. So we've been going for over an hour.
2 hours.
We're good.
Yeah, I mean on this item.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Okay. All right. Going once, going twice. All right, with that, we're going to close the
applicant should approach for
Yep.
rebuttal still.
Yeah, we're going to close the testimony from the audience. And this time we give the applicant and the city staff an opportunity to kind of rebut and provide closing summaries.
We don't rebut and provide closing summaries. We respond to any questions.
You can rebut, yeah. No, you already sworn in.
Okay, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I know it's been a long night, but it's hard to sit back when you hear some things that are not correct, and I just got to put it on the record. Also, I'm a little disappointed in our city residents. We talked about being unity and civil discourse, which we've had, and I appreciate that. Like was mentioned by the commission and the board, the city's already determined the use, that there's going to be one provider. So what is the best location for that particular provider? We already explained why we think we are. We know we're going to be under scrutiny. One of the things I mentioned in my opening remarks is that the homeless outreach team that's part of Ames City and Mary Greeley Health and Arch wants us at the table. They want us to come to the table to find solutions for the city. are not standing alone saying, hey, you know, we're going to do our own thing. Don't worry about us. They actually advocate for us, the Romero House. They did a podcast, 28 minutes. We were mentioned 10 times. So it's hard to sit back and listen to some of this, because to say that every homeless person is a drug addict or a criminal or is going to jump behind a bush on Clark Avenue, I dare anybody to walk down Clark right now and see if there's any traffic at all. There isn't. So I want to point a few things out, and I'm sorry to get a little upset about this, but I see the people that come into our home. They're looking for a leg up. And part of our philosophy at the Ames Romero House is to bring them in to have food and to sit down and have fellowship and make them have some dignity, make them feel like they're important. So that being said, we are trained on de-escalation. It was mentioned by one of our volunteers, before they can even be a volunteer, you have to go through a training program. We have procedures and policies put in place. We have Arch that comes out every Thursday to work with us. We have a lot of different organizations throughout the city that work with us. So we're not on a standalone island here, and we are very well trained. In fact, no volunteer can step in the house and volunteer without that training in place and signing off on the document. And it's a very lengthy procedure book. So I just wanted to clarify that. We pay fees to the Old Town Historic Neighborhood. We went to their picnic this summer. We thought that was good to have community relations. We turned in a 6-page petition on October 8th for the first meeting with City Council that had 6 pages of support, primarily in the Clark Avenue area, because those are the people that know what we do. A lot of our opposition is 3 to 4 blocks away. They don't know what we do on a daily basis. I just want to point that out. Our windows of operation are very limited, again, 1 to 4. I want to be very clear on that. The activities, the ancillary activities that were mentioned are typically small group activities. How can we combat homelessness? It may be a Bible study. It's not anything more than that. And we have it typically, could be 2 to 3 times a week, but it's typically just volunteers and our network. It's not guests that would come in to do that. So I want to be very clear on that too. The actual consultant for the Ames homelessness report reached out to Romero House because they mentioned, a lot of our organizations mentioned, talk to Romero House. I think that's another feather in our cap, is to say we know what we're doing. Fairway supports us. I don't know where that came from. The manager of Fairway allows us to park if we need to for volunteers. Typically don't have to do that, but we have the support of Fairway. So I just want to correct that statement as well. The changing to the gate on 7th Avenue, I think, is a good change. We advocate that. We support that. We agree that a gravel road is probably not the best entrance into the home. I could go on and on. It's just, the bottom line is we know what we're doing. We've been in business for 4 years. I think no matter what we do, the homeless population is going to be in this area. This is the area where they congregate. If we're not here, it's going to get worse. So what do? We set up that little ecosystem that we talked about earlier, where you have the library, Ames Romero House, and Food at First. It takes them off the streets. It takes them off the streets. And I just want to close by saying we have a lot of success stories. Our goal is not just to serve, it's to elevate their lives in a positive direction. We have so many different, in the last month, success stories of taking people off the street, putting them in new apartments, getting them new jobs, having a Sudanese gentleman that couldn't do a job application because he doesn't know how to get in the internet, fill that out for him. There's a lot of things we do at the Romero House. It's not drug addicts walking in our door. It's not what was mentioned earlier. I was very disappointed to hear that. Just not a good statement. Thank you.
Any clarification from staff or questions for staff from the board?
I have questions for the applicant.
Oh, he has a question for you, sir.
I have a few questions for you. As you're coming up, I want to say I sympathize that, you have to go through this process and we may be imposing 2 pages of conditions on you, but I have potentially a few more conditions, so I apologize. Are you required to have like a fire escape plan and a tornado drill plan?
We have that in our policy and procedures book if something like that would happen. So we do have a plan in place.
Okay.
Yes.
And is the de-escalation training a requirement as well for, I think you said for all volunteers?
Correct.
Yes. Is there a supply of Narcan on the premises?
Yes.
Okay. Do so like leading up to 1 p.m. when you're about to open the doors, where do people congregate? Do they congregate in the backyard or on the sidewalk or in the alley?
So right now, the 7 on Clark, and it's a change we're going to make, but typically we tell people not to get there before 12:45.
Uh-huh.
And if they are, we just tell them they can't be standing, congregating. Sometimes it happens.
Right.
We don't want that to happen. So I believe that there's something in the statement that I saw that we would have the right to have 12:45, 15 minutes.
Right.
And then 15 minutes after. But like I mentioned earlier, when people leave at 4, it's typically just a handful of people left.
Right.
So you don't see a large congregation at 4, but you may see one at 12:45. And that's typically could be 5 to 8 people.
And then, so with the current plan regarding the gate, they would be congregating on the sidewalk, which is public space. But they typically now, would they congregate in the yard or?
Yeah, in the front.
In the front.
Yes, in the front of the house. We don't like people on the porch or the stoop, I guess you call it.
Right.
But typically they may be across the street at that side ride seating area. We see that sometimes. Or on the sidewalk. Now we could let them in and have them sit in the backyard in a sitting area until we open at 1 on the new location.
Right.
Just to get them off 7th Avenue.
Okay. And then my other question was for staff. What's the term of this special use permit?
It's in perpetuity.
Perpetuity? Okay.
As long as it's the use that's described in the description of the use and they conform to the conditions. If one of the questions has been what happens in terms of enforcement, there's a variety of enforcement measures in our city code. It can be a municipal infraction, a citation, a warning. If there's repeated violations, the process to end the use requires a public hearing with the ZBA called a revocation hearing.
Right.
That would only occur through repeated violations of the permit itself.
Would we be able to? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
The other caveat is if the use was discontinued for 12 months,
right,
then we do have the automatic expiration in here.
Would we be able to limit the term of the special use permit to a certain number of years?
Jane may want to chime in as well. I think the distinction that our belief is that since the code does not, except for in 2 circumstances, have time limited special use permits, that's not something that's authorized by the municipal code. So like the yard waste example you had, by code, it can only be that. So
right.
Notice to that person was at the time they applied, that is what it is. So we would not advise you to put a mandatory limit of when it expires on here.
I was just thinking like they'd have to just reapply like the yard use or what yard waste thing. But if we shouldn't do that, I respect your.
The difference is with the yard waste, that by reapplying, they don't have any rights, right? It's over. They're reapplying. It's a fresh review. They don't have any right to be there again. They have to make their case again. And in normal special use permits, you're making a decision that the use, if it complies with the description, it would be okay as long as it did that. If there were concerns, it would not be okay. And it should only be for a trial period. That's not a good case to support the use.
Okay. With that, all my concerns have been addressed. So the things that I was concerned about seems to already be being addressed, and there's an enforcement mechanism already. So I'm satisfied.
Nope, this has all been answered.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay, I'm going to flip this a little bit and just go, instead of entertaining a motion, I just want to see if there's any discussion among the board members.
Chad, are you closing the public hearing at this point?
Oh, yeah, the public hearing has been closed. So as we look at this, as obviously there's 3 pages here of conditions. And obviously some of those have changed. The only ones I think I believe that are really material are basically the total number. So, I mean, what we were supplied with was basically is the same. There have been some things clarified in here, but I don't think those are really material changes to the conditions. And I think it does make sense to limit it as far as the number of total people rather than delineating between what type of people there are there, whether it's staff, volunteers, visitors, or guests, and whoever else. The question that was raised by individuals was, okay, was the number, is that appropriate number based on the use and what would be considered the, I guess, the area and the, not only the neighborhood area, but necessarily the area within the home itself. Any discussion regarding that? So that would be basically point number 2 here on the alternatives. 25 people at one time, a total of 45 during the day.
So 45 during that 1 to 4
total. Yeah, that's the total. Well, it's the total count for the day.
For the hospitality
For the
hours.
hospitality, yeah.
Okay.
The other hours are regulated by no more than 10 at a time.
So is it 45 at a time or 45 total unique?
So within that 3-hour period, no
Cumulative.
more than 25 at any one time, with a cumulative of 45 over that 3-hour period.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
sound
the
like
rest
they
of
have
the hours
many.
are 10 as a cap.
Right. I don't like the idea of like if people are filtering in and out, I don't like the idea of enforcing that only like we can only serve 45 people.
I think though it's similar to when we look at traffic for individuals, we'll say, okay, you know, when we do special use permits for in-home business, it's like, okay, what is the traffic?
Yeah.
So we do regulate the total traffic that they have during the day.
It's very normal.
It's like you can have 4 people at a time and you can have no more than 20 or something like that for an in-home business because it's not just number, but it's also volume. So I don't think that's wrong to have that there. I just, you know, what is it the right number or not?
Okay.
Well, and if the applicant's not opposed to those numbers.
Right.
I've had 20 people in my home and it's not really designed for it. And it wasn't really an imposition. So
And
now they were all family and they stayed for like 4 days, but we managed. So, I mean, that's probably a reasonable, in my estimation, a reasonable number of people. And that would be the max, I would think, including staff. Remember, this includes staff. So really, if you've got 5 volunteers and staff, you're probably going to talk about 20 guests. And then if you rotate those 20 guests and you double that, then that's 40. So that's with your 5, that's 45. So.
Right.
Okay. Any other conditions that we think we need to tweak or look at? I think the one other recommendation was just that the president of the neighborhood association, I think that's just because that's the point of contact. I don't know that it's a distinction with a difference between just the notifying the Old Town Neighbor Association or the president. He's kind of
right.
the rep. So
You could say a representative of the.
yeah. Oh, the other one was the parking.
I think if they're willing to park in the garage, that would be in keeping with the residential use. I think avoiding parking in the front would be.
It's already a driveway though, so
That's fair.
it's already.
It's not a paved.
It's not changing the use.
It's a gravel stall, right?
No, the front is
The Clark is
a paved. It's
The
just the
alley
back
is
little
gravel.
pad that's gravel.
And there's 2 in the front.
You stacked, yeah.
Yeah, you have to park. It's a single.
Yeah, if it's already paved, then
2 can park there and then 1 in the back.
in the garage or.
That's
Gravel area.
or in the gravel area. I don't.
Yeah. I
You
don't
already
think-
have parking in the back for Rosedale.
Mhm.
on the other side of the alley. It's on the alley, so
Right.
I guess they would not pave it.
Yeah, if it's paved in the front, then I'm fine with the continuation of that being used for parking.
Yeah. Any additional conditions that you feel, I guess you could say any conditions that need to be taken out that aren't necessary?
There wasn't anything about not letting people sit out front. My concern is that people are going to get in trouble for waiting for the bus.
Oh,
But it doesn't seem like
that. It's just the entrance at
So
that.
I can clarify that the conditions do not manage the right of way.
Right.
so they would have to stay within the right of way.
You can't tell people
Romero
to go
House
on the
can't
sidewalk.
control the right of way. The conditions only manage their property.
Yeah.
So when the front yard language and controls are within the black line boundary there, if you're standing on the sidewalk, you're in the right of way in the parking strip, that is not Romero's responsibility.
Public property.
Right. Okay.
Is there any requirement for, you brought it up, like that the gate would be locked when it's not during the guest hours? I don't know if you want that because that's going to be the main entrance. Even still, you want access.
I think he said that people could be in the backyard if they arrive
Right.
early, and that was my concern is if it's locked and then they
Yeah,
have to
then they have to
stand
be
in the
out there.
sidewalk.
Yeah.
But I think he said that they would be allowed to
Okay.
be in the backyard.
Any additional term or conditions that you think would need to be added?
None of the conditions I've thought of aren't currently being addressed, so I don't want to add them to a special use permit for
Yeah.
no reason. You know what I mean?
All right. Do I have a motion concerning special use permit?
I'm just going to check that Marshall's still with us since we haven't
Oh,
heard from Marshall in a
yeah.
while.
Marshall, are you still there?
I am. I've
Okay.
been listening the whole time.
Okay.
Yeah, because.
All right. Thank you.
Marshall, did you have any comments or anything at this point?
I was going to abstain.
Marshall, you have any questions or anything? Because we can't see if you want to butt in.
Yeah, I don't. It sounds like some of these alternatives and the conditions are slightly being modified. I might ask for some clarifications when something goes up for vote.
Okay. And do you have a copy that was sent out of the alternatives, the modifications to alternatives?
I do. I
Okay.
did get that from this
Or to the
afternoon.
conditions?
So on
Okay.
condition 7, are we changing that from the president to a representative of the board?
No.
Okay. Then I think there's no changes to the conditions, right?
Yeah, there's
Other
there's
than
no-
what has been
right, the
revised.
alternatives that were posed. And like I said, the only material changes really are the first two, which is the number of people and how we define them.
Mhm.
The rest of them are just tweaks, I would say. One thing I would point out too, in condition 17, obviously maintain compliance with applicable building and property. They have to still maintain.
You have to follow the law.
Yeah, well, they have to maintain that, and if, well, as far as the compliance with the regulations, as far as the exterior and their compliance with the Old Town, and that, so there's exterior, they still have to comply with those issues, and there is a mechanism for reporting violations,
Uh-huh.
so forth.
Yep.
It's not our job here to do that.
Who is the code enforcement officer?
Inspection division is the primary code enforcement arm of the city. The planning staff at times is involved as well.
Okay.
So if it gets, they get a report.
Yep.
And obviously this has been pretty public, that here's the conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then those would be investigated. All right. Any other comments or discussion?
Oh, was the change to the sidewalk, is that included in this?
Yeah, we have a condition that says the routes to be approved by staff. I don't remember what number it is.
Or B?
The change to the sidewalk or the entrance? Is that what you're referring to?
Primary access to the rear entrance shall be from 7th.
7th Street. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
right there. I have it.
Yeah, that's part of the hospitality controls, but then there's a condition about the sidewalk being constructed, and that's to be reviewed by staff.
Right.
Anything else? All right. Do I have a motion?
I don't know how to word it, but I can make a motion to adopt the revised alternative 1. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's how I would define it.
Do you have to read the whole thing?
No.
So you,
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Whitehouse, second by McDaniel. Roll call vote.
Schneider,
Aye.
Patton,
Aye.
Whitehouse,
Aye.
Marshall, McDaniel, sorry.
Aye.
Cruz,
Abstain.
Thank you. The SUP for 702 Clark Avenue has been approved. Those wishing to appeal this decision may do so to a court of record within 30 days of the filing of this decision. At this point, do I have a motion to adjourn? I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion by Schneider, second by Whitehouse. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Aye.
Thank you.
thank you.